really good because I want to start to move into, I want to get back to this idea of finding our purpose and how do we find these elements that help to create change. Whether you're the intrapreneur coming to your superiors or you're, the heads of a department or a full organization and you want to start change. How do we start to determine, what are the factors that are going to help us move forward with this project, this new idea, this whatever?
Well, I think one of the things we like to do when we go into it is help people identify what the gaps are. And that sounds easy because it's sort of gaps between outcomes, gaps between what your approach is, gaps between how you set up your current steps. I actually have come to the conclusion after 20 years of consultation that it's rarely in business outcomes. Most businesses today are doing well enough, they wouldn't be surviving today if they didn't have good outcomes. You're not an unsuccessful bank.
Yeah.
There's no way. What we found more and more, the gaps are usually to do with process. So I have this wonderful quote that came from a colleague I worked with a few years ago, and who said, our outcomes are great, so everybody's going for the outcomes, we're going to improve the outcomes. But the process of getting there is like sliding down a rusty razor blade with no underwear on and putting salt on afterwards. Meaning, let's think that through. So yes, we get there. Yes, our outcomes are strong. So the problem is if you consistently look at the KPIs, they are good. They are good, and so that's the problem. We only looked at summative outcomes. Lagging. But what's the process to get there? And in today's world, there is no such thing as a stable team. Teams come and go. There used to be a world where teams could be together for 10, 15 years, even within, I'm sure you've had even within one institution, you've had different teams. So there's an opportunity to build team relationships. So process that underlying, to say it sounds soft and squishy, that underlying trust, sense of confidence. Do I know this person? Can I work with them? How are we going to deal with consensus? How are we going to deal with when we don't agree? Are we going to push it under the surface? Are we going to ignore it? Every single organization we've gone into, they hand over my SOP. Everyone, oh, look at our SOPs. I'm like, that doesn't tell me what you do when you disagree. Who handles that? Where does it go? And I 9 times out of 10, we've set up a couple of exercises where we've said, okay, here's your SOP, do it. But 9 times out of 10, they're all fighting. Or the PM has left the room, or the client has gone off. Because we don't address that piece, and without knowing the gap in that piece, it's very hard to facilitate. Once you bring that to the surface, it's not easy, and it's not always comfortable, then people will go, oh, maybe we do need to do things in a different way. But you're doing it working with allies, not coming in against them.
And I think I'll tie 2 things in, and you're going to love it because purpose is in this. In terms of process, in our operations arm, we've been on a 5-year transformation journey that is all around process, and it's about making things simpler, faster, better, and that is the purpose: simpler, faster, better. And it's 3 words. Everyone down to the most junior employee understands it, knows how it relates to their job, knows how it relates to the tasks they do on a daily basis, knows the impact it has on them, on their peers, on their team, on their client. And the results we've gotten through that transformation are absolutely astonishing. In the spirit of the transformation, massive role impacts in terms of moving people around the organization, so changing their allies, changing their teams, and our employee opinion survey results have gone up. Why? Because the purpose was clear. People understood why it was happening, what the implications were for them, what that end goal was in mind, and that message has stayed consistent. So we're now in year 7, and we are still on the simpler, faster, better simplicity roadmap. Yeah. They love, in our evaluation, we do a leadership program every year, and the evaluation, one of the things we always get comments, I love the strategy hasn't changed.
Yeah, continuity.
So our levers that we pull in relation to the strategy might change, but they know what that, and they also understand it's not a goal line. So it's not that I know what the goal line is, because the goal line keeps moving. So you can always be simpler, you can always be faster, you can always be better. Yeah. But that link to purpose is so compelling for people, and their connection and their understanding on how they fit within the ecosystem has been, I would say, the most critical thing to success.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent point. If you guys follow Simon Sinek, and highly recommend you read his stuff. And he's coming out with a whole bunch of interesting game theory book in the next couple of months, which is fascinating. Point being, a purpose doesn't change. You can change the marketing of it, you can change the word, but essentially there's a contribution component to it, and there's an impact component to it. And The words might change, but the sentiment never does. And if it does, you got a bigger problem than your strategy. But in that regards, you talked about the concept of stable 7 years of that. Today's world changes, right? And so actually in today's world, having that purpose to tie back to is even more important than it's ever been. Because to your point, it's not like you guys haven't changed in the last 7 years. You've had dramatic change. Every time you open the newspaper, there's this guy's going, the girl's joining, whatever the case may be. But it is always with a consistent, yeah, I can see we made that decision because it was driving one of those 3 words. And it also allows people to take ownership at a more junior individual level. If I can go to my boss and say, here, I'm working on this as a side gig project. Here's how it directly relates to speeds, simple, faster, better. Look, if we do this, I can downgrade this. What it does is allow you to kind of go, listen, I've done the analysis, I've done the work, and basically it's really going down to either give me the money now or give it to me at the next cycle of money. Because you, boss, can't tell me we shouldn't be doing this. The timing might be off because we just blew out our $1 million that we needed, but the next time it comes around, you can't tell me this because it drives this, and allows you to keep leadership accountable. Because if they don't, you got to be like, whoa, hold on, you've just blown out 7 years of strategy.
And that's exactly, that was, the power of it was, while we were building the technical infrastructure in the first 2 years, is all of the innovation was grassroots. So it was all being identified at the employee base and being surfaced up. So we were able to execute, get those wins, get that traction, and then implement a layer of technology. Okay, and then we were on another cycle of employee innovation based on the new technology that was implemented. And so you've got innovation coming from 2 sides, and you've got employee buy-in in terms of, I actually am having this impact because I'm identifying things that I don't like doing, that I think are wrong, that I think don't have the client in mind, which is incredibly powerful.
If I could just add, as Sheldon said, just to bring it back along, I think we also have to some extent as entrepreneurs and leaders, teach tolerance for change.
Yes.
It's not easy. And teach, and the same way, and I do bring it back to psychological level, we teach our kids to withstand failure. We teach our kids to understand you're going to lose at certain points. You're going to have failure. And to some extent in organizations, I think we need to teach some tolerance for the change process. It can be disruptive. It can feel uncomfortable. But by you, as you said, recognizing that, supporting that, we're not judging it. We're not saying, oh, you're feeling it, we're not sort of putting that in a box to it. You're also maybe pushing your leadership. Sometimes they need to tolerate change or understand that just because they're ready to act doesn't mean everybody else is, or vice versa. So I do think we need to teach us perhaps the wrong word, facilitate some skills and competencies to withstand the change process.
And if you look at innovation by default has failure. If you're not failing, you can't be innovating. It's just not possible, right? And to your point, I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and somebody made a great comment about it. The problem with that embrace failure thing is it's only half the equation.
Yeah.
It's embrace the learnings from failure. What is the first thing we do when a project fails and we trap it? Everyone's like, great, get the hell out of Dodge, shove everything away, store some files, and let's just never talk about it again. That is a bad innovation failure. What you need to do after the failure is sit down and really dissect and spend a couple of weeks, months, depending on the size of the screw up, and have your leadership say, yeah, for the next couple of months, you're actually just doing an audit, which isn't really hugely valuable to driving innovation forward, but if we haven't learned from it, then it's a bad failure. And so I think that it's not just embracing failure and saying, oh, we got to embrace it, love it. It's going, and when we fail, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to learn from it? How are we going to document it? How are we going to roadshow it? What are we going to do? Because if you don't, and then you just get this big old jumping from failure to failure.
But actually, it is. You said it wasn't bringing value. It is bringing value to the next innovation.
If they learn from it.
If
If
they
they do what
if they identify.
I was with one of the big four. I'll name their name out of it. No, it was a consultancy. It's one of the big consultancies, and at the end of their reports, they just finish the project and move to the next one because I got to make money. But they don't learn from the project, so you just keep doing the same thing over. That type of failure is unacceptable.
So I think that's right. I think we started to touch on this throughout all your answers here. I'm gonna ask one more question, and then I'm gonna just open it up to everybody else and be cognizant of time. Where